Hello, my name is Brian Kirsch, and thank you for attending this session on cost controls for the cloud. So, let's take a look at the problem here. And one of the key issues when it comes to the cloud is there is no limit. When this was data center centric and hardware focused, we had a limit. Your capital dollars was your limit. So whatever hardware you could afford to buy, that ended up being your limit when we talk about the application stack, and whatever you'd happen to be putting in. Unfortunately, with the cloud, that simply doesn't exist. There is no limit to what you can actually pull from the cloud. And there's also no feature set. There's no defined features. When you buy a piece of hardware or a piece of software you installed in your data center, it was fairly static. Sure, you get the updates, the security pieces, and that. But when you look at the cloud, they're continually adding new features, new functionality, and things that people want. And that means it's always something new. And that can become a real big problem, okay? Because one of the issues here is who pays the bill. IT is the consumer of it, DevOps is the consumer, but to put it bluntly, accounting's the one that pays the bill. This is a monthly charge that oftentimes an IT group might not see. It gets put onto an accounting, a continual PO, credit card, what have you, and there's a big disconnect there. So as these costs go ramp up and down, it's the accounting people that are paying it, not the IT people. And that is a real big deal because you don't see the impact of what you're doing versus what's actually being paid out. And that can be a really nasty surprise. Because if you're suddenly utilizing a new feature, a new function set, what have you, and you don't know what the impact is, your bill can suddenly go up 10 grand in a month or 50 grand in a month. And yeah, you'll notice after the fact, somebody's going to come knocking on a door and say, hey, we have a real problem here. But that doesn't help you in the short term here, okay? Because what you end up doing is pointing fingers. And the problem is, this is an issue that's much deeper than that. And we're going to talk about some of the ways you can hopefully get around this and minimize some of this impact, okay? So, and again, this is not about pointing blame, okay? You kind of got to look at what's common in it. And what's common in it is the cloud aspect, but it's also the disconnect piece of it. Because there's a lot of room here for disconnect. Because at the end of the day, it's somebody else's resource and it's unlimited. With no limits, that's a really big opportunity to be disconnected. Okay, so when we talk about cost optimization, one of the things that everyone is looking for is the quick fix, this is going to solve all my problems, I'm good to go, I've done this one thing, everything will be fine. And unfortunately, that is simply not how it works, okay? There's no magic bullet here. There's not a single thing that's going to say, hey, you do this, you're good to go, and you're done, okay? It's just not going to happen. Now, there's a number of things you can do. There's a number of steps, and we're going to go through a bunch of them today. But you have to realize it is a part of an overall solution. It is not a single thing. It's not a single magic bullet that is going to fix your problem, okay? There's some real critical things you can do, but combined is how you actually deal with your cost optimization and, to be honest, lowering your cloud bill, because that's what we all want. Okay, let's talk about discovery here. Let's talk about cost control when you don't know what you have. In today's modern application stack, it is so easy to spin up a dozen servers for something. It's easy to spin up new database servers, whatever you need. You can do this with a few clicks. Infrastructure as code can do it for you. But that's the problem. If you don't know what you have, if you don't know what's being done, how do you know how to control things? I've seen something where I gave a group a dozen servers. They didn't know they had them. They asked for them, never needed them. They just sat out there running. That's a horrible thing, but it happens. And unfortunately, it happens way too often because we all get busy, we go down multiple project paths, stuff gets allocated, and all of a sudden you've allocated things and you don't know about them. And that's a huge issue because again, you're paying for everything that's out there. So you got to remember that. Project timelines are horrible. Everybody's under that rush. You can absolutely misplace things. It is not intentional. People have the best, course of action when they do things, but unfortunately, it is really easy just to misplace and go from there. It's easier to forget about resources. I need a second drive on server. I need a storage bucket for this, whatever the case. You can easily add that in and, it'll be only for a day or two. 3 weeks later, it's still out there. That's the downside to basically being able to click your way through infrastructure so quickly. I can add 30 terabytes to something. For a day? Sure. I get busy, got to go home early, whatever, and it's out there for a weekend, a week, whatever. So that can be really disastrous. And that's a policy issue, that's a procedural issue, but it's something you have to be aware of. And the problem is it can be out there for years. Not cloud-based stuff, but that used to be real heavy in use in larger companies with phones. People had company phones for years after they left companies that companies were still paying for. Just the size of everything they owned was too big. Employee quits, still has a company phone, and it's working for the next 3 years. Don't even know it. You have to take that time and realize what's being out there. It should go without saying, you have to update this frequently. The downside to this, anything you do that is updated frequently is expensive to do. It takes time and resources. That is just a fact. And it probably is going to take more time than what you're ever going to get. Annually at a minimum, but I would be trying to do it every quarterly. If you don't do this, it takes longer the next time. If you're doing it quarterly, yes, it's going to be an interruption in your day, a couple days, what have you, depending on how big things are, but it won't be bad. If you're doing this once a year, it's going to take you a week or two because you just have that much more to go through. Once you kind of get things optimized and you do it frequently enough, you should have less outliers out there that would delay you. But that first time is going to be a really big hit, and you really got to keep an eye on it. Otherwise, it's just going to come back and bite you. Okay, so when we talk about resource allocation, one of the things about this is, and this goes with any dev person, is what do they need over what do they want? Okay, I think we've all seen this with virtualization stack and how that went. I need 8 cores. I need 30 terabytes. Well, is that really a need or a want? That same argument you had with virtualization is a lot more critical here in the cloud. Because unlike virtualization, where you controlled your hosts and you could allocate it and kind of figure things out internally, this one, you're in trouble. Because to put it bluntly, you're paying for it all. And so if you need 8 cores out there and you're, rocking 2, you're paying for 8. It's not like you simply oversubscribed and it's not a big deal and life goes on and nobody notices. Here, you're paying for it. You're paying for those, CPU cores that you've allocated and what have you. You really got to follow this. This can be very traumatic, if that's the right word, to dev people, to tell them no. That no, you cannot have what you think you need. That's a want. Let's actually see what you need. And you see what you need by taking a look at what's actually being utilized. Okay? If they're only utilizing 2 cores in their current day-to-day app and what have you, don't go requesting 6. That should go without saying, but unfortunately it tends to happen a lot. Okay? Here's one of the downsides to the cloud. There's so many features and functionality, different things that can be added on from every cloud provider. And people tend to add them on saying, hey, I'm going to use that service. I'm going to use this service, and I'll be able to do this with this service. 3 months later, you're paying for these services that still haven't gotten used. Or, to be honest, may never get used. That's a big deal. Again, that's the analogy of the kid in the candy store that has been looking at everything, saying, hey, I need this, this, and this, and takes it home and lets it sit, and it never gets used. You gotta kind of get yourself out of that mentality, because otherwise it's gonna get really ugly. Okay? When we talk about data retention, performance of data, not everything, one, deserves to be kept for the next 20 years. If you have a legal or compliance reason, fine. If you don't, make sure you understand that that spreadsheet from 12 years ago maybe can go. Take a look at performance of your data. Can you put it on cold storage? Can you put it on, a Glacier type storage platform, something that's not accessed a lot? Or does it need to be all on SSD or NVMe or what have you? That can save you a ton of money. And here's the thing. People will often say, yes, we use that data all the time. Go look at the last time it was accessed. If it's, 3-4 years ago, hey, that's a great one for long-term storage. I understand you still need it, but you don't need it, on NVMe, okay? That costs a lot more. Being able to do that, being able to take a look at your data, being able to take a look at where things are going, what's on our archive versus, production data, and that is a really big deal. And unfortunately, most people don't do that enough. They just don't. And this one can cost you a ton of money, because the same thing goes with duplicate data, things like that, where you've got, 10 copies of the same, 300 gig file. You got to trim some of that down, because again, you're paying for every gig in the cloud. And if you're not putting either clean stuff in there or taking care of it, you're going to pay a fortune for it. And basically at the end of the day, especially if it's stale data, duplicate data, and it's sitting on high-end either SSD or NVMe, you're paying a ton of money for basically nothing. You're getting no value out of it. So just be aware of that. You got to look at this frequently. Again, this goes back to any type of allocation. The first time you do this, it is going to be difficult. You're going to spend a lot of time doing it. It's going to be a very heavy lift. You're going to be frustrated, and it is just not going to be a fun time. But as you do it more and more often, you will get better with it. Meaning, as your cloud usage clears up, as you get rid of old virtual servers, services you don't need, and resources you're not utilizing, your footprint gets smaller. You actually start to know more of what you're using and then more of what you're paying for. So it's not just about reducing that bill, it's also reducing the amount of time it takes to audit and everything else. So that all has a big benefit in your favor. But that first time you do it is absolutely going to be a nightmare, but it's something you got to do. You have to get started somewhere to do that. So as we take a look at policy requests, you got to be clear on what's being asked. You can't have people asking you vague things. Oh, I need XYZ in the cloud. Just give me 30 terabytes and I'll be fine. No, tell me what you actually need and I'll give it to you. Being vague when you're getting paid or when you're having to pay for every kilobyte out there is a really bad thing. So you want to get people to be clear enough and realize that it can be adjustable. If you need a little bit more, fine, but don't ask for double just in case. And that was always a thing that happened with virtualized environments. People always asked for twice of what they needed. Here, that costs a lot of money, not the ideal thing to do, okay? Now, a lot of people would love to do chargeback, and to be honest, if you're in a big company, you can do this. However, most companies simply can't. They don't have the internal size to deal with chargeback. But that mentality is still a big deal. If you have the mentality of chargeback where what something costs is being shared to the people requesting it, you start to get people to have a little bit more ownership of it. People start to be a little bit more responsible. That is a big deal, because if somebody understands the actual cost of what they're asking for, they might actually give a little bit more thought to what they're asking. Now, I would love to sit here and tell you that that's a guarantee, and of course people will do that and everything else. It's not, but the more you put it out there and the more you have that mentality and that ideology, the more likely you have where some of that might come across. It's a heavy lift. It's a very big change because everything is used to being free. For a dev person, everything is free. They don't always realize the impact of that. And that goes for infrastructure people and anybody. But at the end of the day, if you get that mentality even in there a little bit, that's a big deal. Okay? Now, make sure you got sign off. Make sure whoever's requesting it, the manager, director, whatever, is signing off to know that this costs money. If you allow anybody to go request, you're going to run into the Wild West. People are going to request stuff that you have no idea if it's a greenlit project. Is there a sponsor for it? Is there money for it? And I hate to say this, but giving somebody, oh, hey, you're working on that. Oh, I need this. Great. That casual relationship, that casual ask can suddenly be costing a company $30,000, $40,000 a month and seeing their cloud bill go up. And it could be an authorized project, a pet project, what have you. And you got to be real careful with this because this can actually be somebody's job at that point. So make sure everything's got a sign off so you know what the owner is and that it's approved. Okay. This one is unique. One of the downsides to IT people in general, when you request a service or a server or a application, whatever, we always ask the technical things. How much RAM, how much CPU, all that stuff. What about how long do you need it for? As weird as this sounds, not every application you put in is going to be there till the end of time. Something might be in there till it gets replaced. It might be a year-long project. I don't know. It could be for an initial rush of a launch of a project. Don't know. But here's the thing. If you don't ask, you don't know. And the problem is, and everybody in IT is guilty of this, the request comes in, okay, it looks decent, fine. We plop it in and we never revisit it. We never go back and say, oh, hey, is this thing still working? Is it still needed? Can I adjust the RAM or the storage down? What have you. If you don't circle back on this stuff, nobody will. The dev people won't, the operational people probably won't, and the infrastructure people won't. Somebody's got to take ownership, re-look back at it and say, hey, we can make an adjustment. We can either go down in resources or maybe it can be removed. But if you don't do it, you're in trouble. Because unfortunately, nobody else is going to do it. And again, once it's put in, it tends to sit there forever. And that project could be sunset, what have you. And those servers are still out there running away. Nobody's noticed. That does happen, and unfortunately, it happens a lot. Okay, so when we talk about procedure and somebody requesting, look for something that stands out. If you know there's a new HR app going in or something, fine, great. If they suddenly ask for 30 terabytes, you might want to ask a question. I need 200 CPUs or whatever it is. Ask a few simple questions. One of the things that you're going to find, and this should go without saying, but when vendors give you the specs of whatever you're putting in, or your dev people, when they give you the specs, that is the ultimate performance specifications. Yes, you need 30 cores on this application and it'll run great. Yes, 30 cores to support maybe 20,000 people. If you have 2,000, you don't need the same resources, but they'll still tell you the same requirements. Be careful of that. And that goes into the utilization. Take a look at it. If I'm only rocking 10% of the resources I put into it, adjust it back. That's going to save you money. Because again, unlike virtualization where everything would be shared, you're paying for everything in the cloud. So if you've got 30 cores sitting out, you're chewing them up. Make sure you verify it. So that way then you understand what was asked. You think you have a warning flag here, you flag it, you verify the utilization, and you can basically make the adjustments. Now, be careful. Don't shrink something down so much that it's not functional anymore. If you do that, you've gone the other way, and to be honest, you're going to get yourself in trouble that way. So just something to be aware of. Just, you want to be cost conscious, but you don't want to be so bad where you start actually affecting the performance of the application or anything else, because that's going to get you in a little bit of hot water. And again, always ask for length of usage and make your adjustments. It should go without saying, but it's something we often don't do. And it's really something you need to do because everything does change, especially as more and more applications come online. Now, reporting. Critical to avoid surprises. That goes without saying. That prevents you from suddenly getting that email that from the accounting department that your bill just went up 30 grand this month. The reporting should have told you that. Here's why it often doesn't. People put too many reports in. So if your cloud provider is sending you 10 reports a day, you're looking at none of them. Okay? You have basically oversaturated yourself. You've done the same thing that infrastructure people have done with alarms, where they look at their phone, 500 alarms, they set their phone down and go get coffee. You need to have smart reporting. You need to have reporting that actually brings you value, such as costing and all that. And you don't eliminate the reports that you really don't need, you don't care about. Things that could be done in a weekly summary, not a daily. Make sure what you're seeing actually warrants your time and gives you value to it, where you're actually going to read it, not where you're going to blank out and go get that donut. Okay? Look for trends. I cannot express this enough. If you see trending going up, down, whatever it is, that's how you avoid those surprises. You see what's coming. Okay? You can share that with people. Then you know that, hey, whatever is going on here, we're on a path to a $50,000 a month bill now. Those trends will tell you that. The cloud providers will provide you those trends, and they are absolutely critical to managing your environment. And this is something that a lot of people don't understand. It shouldn't just be certain people within IT looking at this stuff. You need to share costing reports with the people that are using them, like dev, like application owners, other people. Make them understand that, hey, your application is costing us 20 grand a month. You're doing this not to make somebody feel bad. You're doing this to help give them that sense of ownership. If they understand that, hey, this is 20 grand a month or 5 grand a month, and you start to see a difference, they may look at their application a little bit differently or say, hey, maybe resources aren't completely unlimited. I know that this costs something. Giving a group that ownership helps all of your optimization. They are more likely to be a little bit more careful on what they write and how they do things when they start to see the actual costs behind it. Because if you abstract that away and they never see it, you don't have any accountability from that side. And that is absolutely a big deal. You need that accountability. Okay, so in summary, controlling costs, it's not a single item. It is multiple things here. It's multiple steps, it's multiple phases. You have to be able to walk up and down through all of these things and look at these different pieces and these different levels to be able to control these costs. I use the rinse, lather, and repeat comment here. This is something you're going to have to do continually. You can't just optimize everything today and then not worry about it for the next 6 months or a year. You're continually adding things into the cloud. You're changing your applications, your stacks. You're getting new functionality from the cloud. You need to relook at that and say, oh, with this new functionality, we can save X number of dollars. So you have to look at that and realize that, hey, this is a big deal. This can save us a lot of money. But you only know that if you go back and check. Do you do an eval every 3 months, 6 months? It kind of depends on you and your company in that. But you have to do something. If you don't, you're going to end up on something that's several years old, probably costing you a small fortune when it could be done somewhere better, faster, and for a lot less money. But you only know that if you go and look. Okay? So I want to say thank you again for watching this session. My name is Brian Kirsch, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.